Good evening, Jyoti. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How have you been? It's been a long time since we last met.
Yes, it's been some time, and it's always a pleasure to see you as well as talk to you. And I just want to quickly introduce Jyoti. Jyoti is a friend, an advisor, a mentor, somebody that I've known for a couple of years. I've always been impressed with your business understanding of what's going on in the world today, and also how are you helping organizations to become the best in the performance that they can do, right? So, with that, Jyoti, I'll let you maybe do some introduction and then we'll start our conversation for today. Over to you.
Thank you, Gaurav. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. And I quite admire from the sidelines the good work and foundational work you're doing at JOP with OKRs and other things and evangelizing the cause. Maybe it's an idea before its time and hasn't got the traction and attention it deserves and has in more developed markets. And I hope you will be the flag bearer of this. So, a little about myself. Uh, I run a business advisory and implementation support company called White Spaces. We've been in business for 18 years. We help organizations to build capacity to grow, first improve performance, and then capacity to scale and grow sustainably. We serve three clusters of constituents of clients. The first is family owned, family managed businesses, sometimes in transition within the family and sometimes from family to professionals. That's cluster one. Cluster two of our clients are funded tech or tech enabled startups, whom we help from the after they've established product market fit and unit economics to on the scale up or grow up journey. So that's the second cluster of clients. Third, we work with government entities in the UAE, notably Dubai, to help them on medium to long term capacity building for 7 to 10 years.
That's great. So just going back to your first persona, where you're really helping the family-owned businesses, and there are a lot of them in India at least, right? So what is the main differences, Jyoti, you've seen while you've worked with corporates or also with startups or companies who are scaling up versus these family-owned businesses which have maybe today's generation or earlier generation trying to help scale the business up?
Okay, so uh, so you can look at it in a couple of different ways. If we look at it in terms of structure, system, process, corporates and large enterprises are often have a lot of that, uh, and most family businesses tend to struggle or are lower on the maturity scale on that. Uh, so, if you have a high allergy to ambiguity and a need for structure and clarity and policy document, then an established corporate is probably a place. If you're comfortable with ambiguity and have a bias for action and agility, then family businesses provide you, agility and decisiveness, at speed, and accountability for outcomes and all is much sharper and more real time. So that's the plus and that's the minus. Roughly, I would say that.
Got it. Now, we know, and the topic of today's conversation is about measuring what matters, right? Now, I think when you are working in a very structured environment, everybody knows what are the metrics to measure, and they are measured at the timely basis. But when you are working in ambiguity and there is less or loose structure, what are those important metrics to measure, and how do you come about those metrics? And do they actually change from one organization to another, or they remain the same usually?
No, not only do they change from one organization to another, they also change for one organization depending on which stage of maturity or market dominance they are at, right? If I'm a market leader versus a market follower or a market maker, they would be different, right? If I am, let's say growing but not profitable enough, or my portfolio has either customer profitability or product profitability issues, then they could be different. If I have had acquisitions and I want to see if my portfolio of acquired companies are giving synergy or unlocking, then they could be different. So it depends is the answer.
Absolutely. No, I get it. And how important performance as a matrix is to measure today? And what are the tools or what are the different ways to measure according to you?
So Uh, so there's a word called performance, and there's a word called traction. If you're a stable, established business where you have data reliably about, let's say, year-on-year growth or year-on-year anything, and you also have access to, let's say, market share data, like in some cases, like insurance and all, where a lot of data is reliable and timely on in the public domain. So that's then you can measure performance, and there are you can measure metrics and ratios, right? But if you're in a new area, if you're in an emerging area, if in an uncharted area, and you are trying to be a market maker, or establish product market fit, or and then your go to market, then traction measures, right? I mean, traction and effort measures begin to have more importance.
Got it. No, very well, very well. And what, and let's say if you are in a growth stage and traction is something that you want to measure, what are those few things, maybe three important things that actually tells a business whether they are getting the traction or not?
To my mind, the three things are: first is customer momentum. Are we creating more advocates or sign-ups and repeats than we are losing? Some kind of a NPS, net promoter score, plus a retention trend. That's the first thing. The second thing is the time to learn, adopt, and adapt quickly. And to how quickly can we turn the feedback or the authentic early warning signals we pick up from the marketplace and iterate them, so that the speed of insight that we get, and and the data that we generate around traction or lack of it. And today with digital, in a digital world, it's very that the time between event and capture and recording and the data is those loops have got compressed. So speed of insight is the new word. So that's the second one: time to learn, adopt, and adapt. And you know the only sustainable edge a company really has over competition in the industry is its ability to learn, adopt, and adapt faster than competition. The third, I would say, is because a lot of companies get lost in measuring activity rather than achievement or outcome, or measure output and not outcome or impact. A focus to effort ratio, how aligned is our energy to our more strategic bets on a less is more. Many companies have a trap who believe more is better, but the OKR framework, as well as high performance and outlier performing companies, always follow less is more, and that's the third thing to measure.
So let's drill down or double click on this less is more, right? So less is more holds true for what? Is it your offering? Is it the strategy? Is it less people is more efficient? So what do you mean by less is more?
Uh, Less is more is certainly at the strategy. We will do one or two things, we'll do them world class and better than others, and we'll say no to a raft of things. It is important to focus on the critical few than what we consider the important many, because everything could be could take up resources and become a distraction. Also, what we measure, we have to be measuring what is important, and what gives me the movement of needle on those actually matters and helps me to get to those three parameters I talked about, right? Either it is showing me my customer momentum, or my time to learn, or my focus to effort ratio.
Got it. Absolutely. I mean, I've done startups and I've been a part of a family business as well. Sometimes it gets a shiny ball is always a distraction, but sometimes when you're not able to get enough momentum, and it could be a market reason or just timing of the product, or even what is more required in the how to penetrate the market, you tend to question that, do I have enough in the offering? Do I actually need to go a little more broad? So I think you go back to that warehouses versus a skyscraper, right?
Mhm.
And people tend to go into a warehouse because something will sell. So how do you control that when you are speaking to your businesses that you are mentoring? How do you kind of control that urge and keep them focused or prioritize what they need to focus on?
So prioritize, you have to prioritize brutally till it hurts. Now, how do we get them to focus? A big thing that companies need to do in this fast changing world, where your competition of today may not be disrupting you, the disruptor always comes from somewhere else. So a big ability is our ability to frame hypotheses and test them in short cycles. So if people want to do a warehouse, I would say, okay, for the warehouse model to succeed, help me frame three hypotheses and tell me that in 6 weeks you will have given me is this a red, amber, green on how I will measure traction to see whether there is meat here and we persist. So green means and we have some measure of that, some number or target. Green means yeah, go ahead full steam. Amber means I'll give it a little more time, and red means we'll drop it. And we have to do this in an agile, you know, certainly quarterly, if not monthly basis.
Very well. No, perfect. Now let me go back to that performance matrix. Right. A lot of times we have seen that a lot of at least family businesses run with a lot of instinct and gut. Right. I mean, I'm gonna do this because my gut says so, and this is how I've run my business, and it's gotten me success. How do you about bring about that shift and make them like not really just focus on that but include data, understand the matrix, have some kind of a science to the whole madness around this?
Right. So this is an important question and a difficult one, because often, particularly in family businesses, the owners believe it is their intuition that really got them there, which is superior to others, intuition or gut, whatever you call it, got them there in the first place, and they are very reluctant to let go of that, right? Uh, so, uh, so, so what I tell them is intuition is experience in disguise, but it is fallible. And the good news is that in a digital first world, while the cost of the poor judgment is amplified, the data and feedback comes to a real time data comes back to us really fast, rather than have to wait and do a post mortem. We can easily do a biopsy versus and especially in OKR framework, versus having to wait for the autopsy to find out in post mortem what went wrong. So I often tell leaders, use your gut to ask the right questions. And your gut is actually your opinion till we have a validation of that hypothesis that we'll frame. All opinions you have, can I frame a hypothesis and can I test that in a short loop and cycle? Let data validate the answers. And finally, I will tell them it's not about replacing your instinct. It is refining it with data and hypothesis validation.
Got it. And you've been talking about OKRs. How much do you think OKRs can really help? And if you think they can do, why do you think not many businesses use it today, at least in the Indian context?
Okay, so OKRs aren't shackled. So many people feel that it's cumbersome, and maybe they lack software or infra or tracking mechanisms. Uh, they struggle with less is more. So the critical few versus important many is something they struggle with. So I would tell them that OKRs aren't shackles; they're scaffolding. When the teams are clear about the O stands for a broad directional agenda, right? On the why and the what, and they have they earn the freedom to own the how, which are the initiatives to see whether the needle on the key result is moving or not. You know, uh, it takes away the need for micromanagement. If you want to scale fast, you need to be able to have transparency in metrics that builds trust. There is naming and shaming that I am stuck because X did not deliver their outputs, and we use that data to create influence and impact.
Very well. And why do you think in the Indian context, organizations or people at least, other than they feel that they're cumbersome, why do you think they are not really getting into really understanding what's happening in the organization with data through performance? Is it something which is also changing with time? What is your gut says on this?
So I think uh, there is, firstly, I think there is lack of awareness and all of that. Some people believe it's only for tech companies and it's only for Silicon Valley startups, something like that. So it's either inertia or ignorance often. I think that people seem to be comfortable with the status quo and not challenging it around KPIs or any other post-mortem or autopsy based systems that they have, right? uh, I would think that's the number one reason, another primary reason.
Understood. Understood. So before we let you go, Jyoti, anything that you would like to share about the topic of measuring what matters, performance in the digital world, anything that we may have not touched, but you think the audience can gain from today's conversation?
Yeah. So what I want to say is that uh, don't measure everything. Measure what moves the system. If there is a metric on your scorecard and it hasn't really moved in the, the needle on anything meaningful, drop that question. Why do you have that metric? And sometimes a metric may be relevant for 2 quarters and may not be relevant after that. So that agility uh, in a complex environment like today's, right? More data doesn't necessarily mean more insight. We need signal amidst all the noise. We have to figure out what is the high fidelity signal, and just not noise. More data often creates noise, and it even overwhelms or distracts people. And when in a large board, in a large meeting, in a large company, uh, there is death by information overload. So I recommend leaders revisit their dashboards quarterly and ask which of these metrics have helped me change my decision or refine my decision last month or last quarter. Keep those and drop the rest. It takes courage, but if they experiment and pilot with that, they seem to begin to enjoy it and like it.
Yeah, but I think so well said. I think first to identify what are those metrics, and it can change from a quarter or the scale of the business at any given point, I think is extremely hard. Then having that courage to identify and stick with it, and then the discipline to keep following it till how is it really so great. And how do you think technology can help with this? What you just said, do you think technology can help in any way?
Hugely. Without technology, there is no agility and no scale and no reliability. And transparency. So, without, I tell companies, you can begin, understanding the concept and piloting and getting buy-in. Maybe you can begin in Excel, but very soon you need to move. Otherwise it will become so much of a heavy lift that everybody will complain that OKR is the business, and the business is not the business, right? And OKR is not an industry. OKR is a tool or an enabler. Like any tool or enabler, technology, digital is the only way for you to be able to adapt, adopt, and iterate faster than competition, right? So I go back to that point.
Right. Hey, thank you, Jyoti. Thanks for your time today. We at Job or Joy of Performing, our passion is to bring that business and performance management alignment in the organization, and we totally believe that one without the other doesn't work, right? In isolation. So thank you. And what is the way our audience can get in touch with you, Jyoti, if they want to?
Sure. Whitespaces.com is our website. My email is jyoti at whitespaces.com. So those are two ways. You could reach me on my mobile, which is 9899480006. And
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jyoti. Thanks for your time today.
thank you, Gaurav. It was a pleasure talking to you, and all the best. And I hope to see you soon in person.
Absolutely.